Well, hello friends, and welcome to the SerenityOS update for December 2021. It's the last day of the last month, and it's been a great year for SerenityOS. A bunch of people have asked me when the yearly update is coming out, and actually it comes out on October 10th. So that's the birthday of the system when I usually publish the Happy Birthday Serenity blog posts. So the one for this year already came out, and I'll link to it in the video description. But now we're going to talk about December. So two cool things that happened on YouTube in December that I want to share with you. The first one is that Linus has made his own YouTube channel, and he's now uploading SerenityOS hacking videos from his perspective. And I've been really enjoying watching those, seeing his development perspective and his workflow. And I think you might like it too. So definitely check it out and support Linus with a sub. Second thing is that JT from Systems with JT has made a new video review of SerenityOS exactly 1 year after the SerenityOS review last year. And potential new tradition taking shape here. It was really fun to watch JT come back to SerenityOS a year later and see all the stuff that had changed since then. And I really recommend checking that video as well. Anyways, let's take a look around the system and see what's new for December. So we're back on the SerenityOS desktop once again. And today I don't have a whole bunch of things personally to tell you about because I've been doing mostly low-level work this entire month. Like I wrote a new kernel heap allocator, I worked on a bunch of security mechanisms, things like that, and nothing really visual. But I want to show you some stuff that other people worked on, and then I'm going to outsource the rest of today's demos to other people, which I think will be really fun. So before that though, let me just show you some really cool stuff. This one is one I really love. So let's grab a full system profile, do something super intense like resize this window a lot, stop profiling, and then open up the profile viewer. So Windows Server looking busy here, and let's drill into that by opening it up. So we can see that we are in Painter Blit with opacity, which makes sense. I was resizing a translucent window very aggressively, and 51% of time is spent there. But maybe I want to know more than just how much time was spent in this function. And now we can. So Stefan has added a show source option. And what that does is it opens up this new pane down here where you get a line-by-line breakdown, C++ line-by-line breakdown of the sample. So it's a little bit crude right now, as you can see, because it loads the entire CPP source file for each function that we open. So you have to scroll around a bit to find the lines that were actually sampled. But we've found some right here, and we can now see per line how much time was spent within this function. Previously, we had a disassembly view where you could see per instruction, but this is a much more ergonomic way to understand where time is spent in a program, right? So really, really great work by Stefan, and I think this is going to make performance work a lot easier and more effective on the system. So just really, really great. And then a bunch of little things I'm just going to show you as well. For example, the app file system that we have. So we have these files called AF files, which describe an application, and they are now syntax highlighted by our text editors. And this was implemented by Mache, so thank you, Mache. And then if we look at our fonts, we can see that Xexa continues their crusade on just making lots and lots of glyphs, and now I can't accidentally scroll some into view for some reason. Yeah, here we go. So they've been adding just lots and lots of glyphs, and it's hard. It's still like not at the point where you can just randomly scroll anywhere and find them, but if you have patience, you can find a bunch of them. This is super cool. Just expanding our Unicode coverage in this system bitmap font, and you just love to see it. I love the dedication and the consistency. All of these are super awesome, and the work just carries on. So big shout out to Xexa for working on this. Likewise, a bunch of people have also worked on our help system or on the man pages. So people like Liav, Sam, Jakob Niklas, and probably others as well have been adding new man pages, refining old ones. And it's one of those things where I always figured that if we build the infrastructure for documentation here, for in-system documentation, then people will sort of add to it organically. And it really seems to be happening. So that's super cool. Really happy to see people take the time to expand on the documentation. Really great work by everybody. And one little thing more that was really neat, which is it's a small thing, but I still really like it. So Image Viewer now has the ability to switch to a different scaling mode. So if you like blurry scaling, you can switch to bilinear filtering. But if you're like me, you prefer nearest neighbor, that option remains, but at least now you can choose. And this was added by Luke. So thank you, Luke, for doing that. Oh, and before I forget, one last thing. A bunch of people have been picking up the system in new countries recently, and often when that happens, they discover that their keyboard doesn't work, and then they go and figure out how to add a custom key map for their country. So we've been adding a bunch of new key maps recently, and I love that. That's so cool. If you have to customize the key map for your system, please send us the key map in a pull request so we can make it available for others. But it's just so cool. Like, look how many different countries we've been running in where they had to add a custom key map. Really, really sweet. Anyways, as I said, I've been doing mostly low-level stuff this month, so nothing great visual to show you. Instead, I'm going to hand over to Jelle, who's going to show you something really cool.
Thank you, Andreas. So I would like to show you some things that we've been doing for LibGL in the last couple of months. LibGL is our software implementation of the OpenGL specification. And the cool thing about having such a library inside of SerenityOS is that we can build ports against LibGL. And they can use LibGL as an OpenGL implementation to render their things on screen. So the first thing I'd like to show you is the fact that we have had the Quake port for some time now. But what you might not know is that we've also gained OpenGL support for Quake, basically GL Quake. Stefan and Quaker have done a lot of work to get this up and running. And yeah, I think it's really awesome. Let me show you. So everything you see now on screen is Quake rendering through OpenGL, through LibGL. And this has been a huge amount of work getting the textures in place, make sure the transformations work right. And this has been a lot of fun debugging. And as you can see, it works. It works awesomely. What you can also see is that we don't have the best performance yet. So you see that we are running at 14 frames per second at the moment. That's not all that great, but we're working towards getting a correct implementation of OpenGL first, and only if everything is working correctly, then we're going to take a look at the performance and make sure that we hit that 144 Hertz, because that's what we all want, right? Yeah, as you can see, this is awesome. And since Quake was a pretty early OpenGL game, there's still a lot to implement for newer games. So something that I did was build out LibGL to the point where it could run ScumVM. And ScumVM is a port that I added earlier to SerenityOS, but that actually has OpenGL support for both the launcher that you see here and in-game rendering. So you might think that's not a big deal, but basically what we did here is make sure that ScumVM is able to upload all their bitmaps as textures in a certain format, and then LibGL to be able to render these 2D rectangles or quads. And as you can see, that's working pretty okay. And then you have these games like Grim Fandango that utilize OpenGL to not only render these movies, as you can see right here. These are actually just 2D quads with textures of the movie frames. But also in-game, you can see that we have many from Grim Fandango walking around, being rendered pretty correctly. As you can see, we still have some depth issues. That has to do with the fact that we have a depth buffer inside of LibGL that needs to be updated by the game, and we don't support that yet. So, if anyone wants to work on that, be my guest. Stefan has also put a lot of work into splitting up LibGL into the software rasterizer, which is called libsoft GPU, and LibGL, which is still the OpenGL implementation. And that looks a bit like this. So you'd have your game talk to LibGL for OpenGL commands, and then LibGL passes on the triangles that need to be rendered to libsoft GPU. And in the future, this will allow us to also talk to hardware, which is really awesome. The last thing I want to demo is Tux Racer. So Tux Racer is the belly sliding penguin game that a lot of people know and love. And Tux Racer actually uses OpenGL for both the menu and the game itself. So it was some work to get this up and running, but as you can see, it works pretty nicely. We don't have the performance there yet, but as I said, we are going for correctness first and performance later. So this pretty much looks like the game did on hardware, which is really awesome. We're really getting to the place where games start to look like their hardware counterparts. Tux Racer can be installed through the ports Tux Racer directory, invoke package.sh, and you can just start playing this game inside of Serenity. So the last two things I'd like to mention are two upcoming things in LibGL and libsoft GPU. Stefan has been working on a debug overlay in libsoft GPU, which will basically show all kinds of statistics like frames per second, frame time, pixel overdraw, all these neat little statistics that you need as a developer on LibGL to understand what an application or a game is doing. And the second thing that he has been working on is sub-pixel precision. So our rendering engine in libsoft GPU actually uses pixel precise rendering of triangles, which is not enough to give this smooth impression in a game. You need sub-pixel precision, and he has been working to improve on that. And that will be a really neat change in the future. This was my demo of LibGL and libsoft GPU changes that have happened in SerenityOS. I wish you a very happy new year, and back to you, Andreas.
Okay, thank you, Jelle, for that awesome demo. Next, we're going to hear from Linus, who's going to talk about web stuff, JavaScript, and something else a little bit special.
So there's a couple of new things in LibJS this month that I want to show you. So first of all, let me mention the test262 score as usual. We still run the test262 test suite on every merge to master and track the progress over time. And we've increased by about 0.5% in the last month, so not a whole lot, but it's definitely still going up. But yeah, let's jump into the features. So something that's new this month is console.group, which is console grouping. So that was added by Sam and implemented both in the JS REPL and the browser JS console, and basically allows you to group messages together. So you can see I make a log message and then I create a group, and then all subsequent log messages are indented by a certain level, and when I make more groups they get indented further, and I can just end groups and they get back to the normal indentation. So that's just a standard feature that we now have. Might be useful for debugging. And also new is console.time, which basically just times the duration. And then also new is datetime format, which I briefly mentioned last time. But of course, this is powered by libunicode and implemented by Tim. So really great work. It's great to see libunicode still constantly expanding, and it's really powerful now. And I'm curious to see where else we can use it. But basically you pass it a locale. For example, you can compare US English and British English here, and then you pass it just a regular date. There's also some integration to be done for temporal, but we haven't done it yet. And then so it does the date formatting according to the locale here. And you can, of course, also pass options like the date style or the time style. And then you can, for example, get a fully formatted date for the current language and locale, which is really cool. And might be useful if you don't want to hardcode a certain format if you have a website with an international audience, for example. And then, well, that's just new. We have a couple of more temporal changes, basically just updating for some spec changes that got merged in December, because TC39 had a meeting, and so then they merged all the changes that are proposed. So we updated that, and just a bunch of small things by the usual people, really. So we have parser fixes by David. We have some GC improvements and new functionality by Andreas. For example, we used to have a marked value list, which was limited to just the value type, and now you can have any type parameter, so basically a strongly typed list of the same kind, which is really useful. And we have a bunch of fixes for runtime correctness, refactorings, more work for completions. Those were done by Luke, by Tim, by myself, by Eden. So really great work, everyone. And let's see where we get with this next year. So we also have a couple of new things in the browser this month. And one really cool change I like is in the DOM inspector. So we have this little DOM inspector window, and we have support for CSS custom properties. And but previously we would only see computed style colors or values down here. So what Sam did is adding a new variables tab, which you can see is empty. But once I select an element, for example the HTML root element, it gets populated with all the values. So for example here you can see the various colors we use and nested variable lookups and some other property types down here. So it basically grabs everything that applies to the selected element and then it shows you, which is really convenient for debugging. So great work on that. And Sam also did some more work on the CSS parser as usual. So some general fixes and some more work on variables actually, specifically fallback values. So when looking at a value that doesn't exist, like in this example, just got some text and then I say color, variable does not exist, and then you can provide a fallback. And so it does a lookup for this, doesn't find it, and then applies a blue color, which is really nice. So that's CSS updates, and then Luke did a bunch of changes, so just lots of general fixes and some work on the abort controller, which we already had. And then I myself started working on a small thing in crypto, so it's called Digest, which is basically SHA hashing in the web browser. Did a video on that if you're interested. And related to that, I also did the text encoder interface, which you can see here. So you just pass it some text, and it creates a uint8 array of the UTF-8 encoded code points, basically. You can turn it into an array as well, which is useful if you do some lower level stuff with strings. And also new this month is some work on the Canvas implementation. So we now have a Canvas drawing state, which basically allows you to, at certain points, store the current state, like certain properties like the color and thickness of drawing lines, and then at a later point restore that. And another function is context. So context is my Canvas rendering context here from the page, and some rather new function that got added to the spec sometime last year, I think. Oh no, actually sometime this year, so in 2021, is context reset, which basically does exactly that. Just gets rid of everything and draws a transparent image. So yeah, some more Canvas work. Something else that's new this month is support for a new image format, which is the quite okay image format for fast lossless compression. You might have seen this or not. Recently, it's quite new. It had its 1.0 release, and so I thought we should totally have a decoder for that. It's very simple, so it's like a single page PDF specification. They have a bunch of encoders in other languages, but of course we made our own. This was made by Dominic, and you might know him from the various JavaScript games he made, and this file format and some other stuff, so definitely check him out. Twitter, PhoboSlap. And so, ironically, this is not loading, but that's a PNG, not quite okay image format. So the extension is QOI, and by using libgfx, we easily get system-wide support. So that means the browser, the image viewer, even pixel paint, stuff like that. So I have an image in the browser here, online.qi. It just loads like any other image. Also, as you can see, this was during development, so it's an easy format, but it wasn't totally straightforward. So I had a little accident here while developing. This is the same image locally, so you can see banner2.qi gets the size, you can zoom in, zoom out. So it's basically just like if you had a PNG, but it's much, much easier. And let's also look at files. So we can simply say file, and then I have the same thing here, and it even tells us, oh, this is this format and this size, which it also does for PNGs and JPEGs and stuff like that. So it's really just natural integration into the system, which is quite nice. And back to Andreas.
So I think that's everything we had to show you today. I want to thank everybody so much for checking in and staying up to date with our project. If you want to come chat, do join the Discord server. There's a link to that in the video description. I also have a weekly live stream here on YouTube. It's every Friday at 4 p.m. Swedish time. We call it SerenityOS Office Hours, and everybody's welcome to ask whatever they want to know about SerenityOS. Technical, non-technical questions, everything's welcome. Finally, if you would like to sponsor development of SerenityOS, you can find donation options for that in the video description. I'm personally working on this full-time since May of this year, thanks to the very generous support of many awesome people. And I'm just so incredibly grateful to be able to do that. So thank you all so much. And that's it for today. So I guess I'll see you all next year. Happy New Year and good luck in 2022.